We'll call to order the meeting of November 19th of the Park and Recreation Commission. The Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Fursell.
Ready? Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we'll have roll call, Ms. McGill.
Chair Longstreet.
Here.
Vice Chair Larimore Hall. Here. Forsell.
Here.
Gonzalez.
Here.
Connor is not here. Intern Torres Santos.
Here.
Okay. Ms. Rapp, do we have any changes to the agenda tonight?
No, we don't, Chair Connor. I apologize. I was just saying to myself, Ada was not here. Chair Longstreet.
That's okay. I answer to anything. And now we will move to public comment. Any member of the public may address the Commission for up to 1 minute on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Commission that is not scheduled for public discussion before the Commission tonight. Mr. Tyburn, would you like to come up?
Well, now the public is aware of this conspiracy between this commission and Mrs. Rapp and Mr. Downey. The press, thank God, came to understand what's going on, that Mr. Downey is now simply going to homes, pointing at a tree and saying, I don't like the way it's pruned, you deserve a citation. He's not following the law. The law says you're not allowed to remove a tree nor cut more than a third, but he's decided to move on people's trees if he doesn't like the way they're pruned. And I'm not the first one to be cited like this. We've always held your commission in high esteem, but now you're regarded around town from people who just meet me in the supermarket as a bunch of crazy bureaucrats. And I think you deserve that because you're permitting Mr. Downey to do things that are not proper. Instead of paying attention to the city streets, which are an appalling condition, if you take a walk around and look at them, they're diseased and dying all over the city. You'd make some realizations. There's no law backing up his citations, just his opinion. This is a bonfire of the vanities, ladies and gentlemen. When you point at someone's tree and tell them you don't like it because it doesn't fit your aesthetic desires, that is fascism. Reminds me of the witch trials. Do you think that people in this city are so stupid, so ignorant that they don't know what is a beautiful tree on their own property, that Mr. Downey can go and identify their tree as something that he doesn't like and then give them a citation? And they're guilty right off the bat. Now they have to defend themselves against
Thank you, Mr. Tyburn.
One more second.
No, I gave you 2 minutes. That was our agreement. Thank you.
Mr. Downey is now cutting trees like lollipops, as you have seen. More of their all over. I warned this commission. No one paid any attention to me.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Tyburn.
I shall return to see if you've come to your senses and got him under control.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, we will now move to community service recognition. Ms. Rapp.
Chair Longstreet and commission members, it is our privilege tonight to take a moment and express our appreciation to a man who, together with Richard Johns, the previous Parks and Recreation Director, built our municipal golf course into the prize jewel that it is today. And after 28 years of service to the golfers of this community, to the Santa Barbara Golf Club and the City of Santa Barbara, Richard Chavez is retiring. And so we asked him to come this evening to express our appreciation to him and recognize his many contributions over the years. And so if the commission would like to...
Mr. Chavez, would you like to come up, please? Congratulations on your retirement. And I have asked Commissioner Forcell, who has been the golf liaison for many years, to do the presentation because he spent a lot of time with
He certainly has.
you. And
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
That is nice, isn't it?
That's very nice.
Well, it's been my privilege, Richard, to work with you the last number of years, and this is the year that we've celebrated the 50th anniversary of the golf course, and to think that you've been involved more than half of that time. It really is no understatement, I think, to say that you're an icon out there, and you've had much to do with the success of the Santa Barbara Golf Club, and it is a very successful club and has been for a long time, and everybody in Santa Barbara knows what a jewel it really is. So we're going to miss you, and I know you have said that you're going to be around some, that you're not going to be gone all the time, and we'll look forward to that, and thank you very much for all your service for all these years. You've done a terrific job. You can be proud of it.
I was not expecting this, so thank you very, very much. That's very nice.
well deserved.
I wanted to say a couple of words. Number one, I wanted to thank the City of Santa Barbara. It's been a great relationship for 28 years, and it seems like the relationship between a private owner and the City of Santa Barbara sometimes doesn't work as well as it should, but it has worked very, very well in my situation, and I want to thank all of the City of Santa Barbara. Richard Johns had a tremendous amount to do with the golf course. It was his pride and joy, and he and I made a commitment 28 years ago to make it the best municipal golf course in Southern California, and I think we accomplished that over the years. I also want to thank Nancy Rapp. She took over a very, very difficult situation at the golf course when she came on. We get into habits of doing certain things, and it's kind of difficult to change the way things are done. And I think Nancy has done a tremendous job of getting on the program and realizing what a tremendous asset we have at Santa Barbara Golf Club. I also want to thank my wife. I wish she had been here. She was ill today, so I apologize for that. But she's put up with me for all 28 of those years, so it's been a great relationship, and she certainly has as much credit as I do. I also want to thank my staff. I think all of you know how much of a situation has gone through as far as finding a new director of golf, and I want to say that I think the city's done a tremendous job of interviewing and getting the right person to continue with the success of the golf course. We call it the hidden jewel, and I think it is. I think it's shown that it can be self-sustaining. I had a little comment that I wanted to make. When I came here in 1981, the green fees for a senior was $3, and the city of Santa Barbara was subsidizing the golf course to a tune of about $66,000 a year for the senior play that was playing at the golf course. Since we've been there, the subsidy left that next year. The golf course has been self-sustaining. It's made some money. The improvements have been many, and I know that in the future there's going to be a lot more. I think that it is very, very important for all of us, the Recreation Commission, the Golf Advisory Commission, the City of Santa Barbara, to realize what an important product we have at the golf course, and I hope that we can continue to make it grow. The golf industry is in big trouble right now. Almost every golf course is down. Play is down. Finances are down. And I think that with the right direction, Santa Barbara Golf Club can be a unusual part of the industry and make very, very good money. So hopefully with the input of Nancy Rapp and Chris Tallarico, I think the golf course is going to continue on its merry way and do very, very well. Again, thank you very much. This will definitely be displayed at home proudly, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You for everything.
And Commission, if I could, we do have present with us today, I'm sorry, could you just give that to Richard so he doesn't leave without it? We do also have the new Director of Golf with us. If I could just ask Chris Tallarico to come forward and be introduced to the Commission. We did go through a very competitive process, and Chris, who has worked with Richard for 17 years out at the Santa Barbara Golf Club, won the contract, and we're well underway. We've talked about all the transitions, and so I just wanted to take this opportunity while Chris was here to introduce him to you. And any questions that you have?
Welcome aboard. Are you ready to step in?
Thank you. Yes, very daunting task to follow in quite the footsteps that Richard's left. As we all know, he's done a great job out there. It's been a pleasure of mine to be mentored by him, as so many other people in the golf business have done so. And if I can just continue to build on the great product that Richard's built out there, continue to move forward and take it to the next millennium, that we're really trying to create a long-term relationship here. And I hope that I'm standing up here in the next 25 to 30 years accepting the same situation that Richard's in. Be very honored. It's been very humbling on my part. As Nancy knows, just mentioned, it was a very competitive process, and I'm very honored and very humbled to be stepping into the big shoes that Richard's leaving, and I just look forward to the challenges that are ahead that Richard mentioned, and looking to take them head on, and working with the Parks Commission and the City of Santa Barbara and the Parks and Recreation to develop a great relationship and keep it smooth and flowing, as it's been with Richard for the past 27 years. And Richard always said something to me when I remember when I first started working there, that work is a 4-letter word, and he's never worked a day in his life. So if I can come out of here after 27 years with those same thoughts, it'll be great for not only myself, but for the City of Santa Barbara as well. So thank you for considering me for the position, and I look forward to it. Thank you.
Good luck. Are there any questions? Or?
Thanks, Chris.
Good luck, Chris. I just briefly want to announce, if you're here for an item and you want to speak to the item, please fill out one of the white forms in the back and put the item number up in the right-hand corner. Okay, now we move on to Commissioner Committee Assignment Reports. Do any commissioners have any reports to make?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Forsyth.
I did attend the Golf Advisory Committee meeting, and many of the things that we just discussed or just had presented were what was on the agenda then. Chris was introduced. I had not met him before. He's a very bright guy and is going to do a good job. And as Richard said in his comments, their rounds are down in golf in general, and it's one of those troughs things. Golf is like any other sport, rises and falls, and Santa Barbara is doing well by comparison to many golf courses, and is holding its own. And the progress on the improvements to the golf course are moving along, and there were a number of other items discussed, and pretty much in a positive mode. So my report is positive.
Great.
May I just add one more comment, because the compliments were tremendous. The Golf Advisory Committee members, several of them commented that in all their years golfing at Muni had never seen the greens in the condition that they are today. And so since Mark Reed is here with us, I did want you to know that they spoke so highly of the job that he's been doing since he's been on board. And he's a little worried that the bar is set pretty high now. But I just wanted you to know that they were just beyond themselves with being pleased with how the golf course is looking.
Well, Mark, I'm sorry to have overlooked you. I didn't see you there in the back. But yes, everybody, I can confirm that everybody is thrilled with the condition of the golf course.
Good. Other commissioner reports? I attended the Creeks Advisory Committee, and we will be receiving the report on the capital budget tonight. A number of I think four of us actually were at the meeting on last Thursday night that was of the Joint Advisory Committee meetings, and we had to postpone that meeting due to the fire, and it is rescheduled at the Westside Community Center for tomorrow night at 7, and that is a joint meeting of the three advisory committees, and the focus will be youth violence. So that moves us to Commission staff communications. Any?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I thought I would just take a moment to first off have staff give you a status report on park properties that were damaged in the T fire and talk a bit about what our staff role has been to support the people who have been affected by the fire and the emergency response to the fire. Several of our staff were actively involved in the city's emergency operations center, working 12-hour shifts that began Thursday night at 6 o'clock. And we had different requests that we worked to fulfill that process. We, in particular, coordinated the shuttle. The fire department asked us to coordinate a shuttle to take the homeowners that lived up on Conejo into the area because they wanted to give them access, but they were not ready for personal vehicles to go up into that area. We operated that shuttle for a day and a half, and the homeowners were very appreciative of those efforts. We also in the last few days have opened up the local assistance center, which is operating at the Davis Center. We pulled together very quickly various city and county departments and asked them to have representatives at the center to answer questions for people that are facing rebuilding. We also have information on temporary housing. We've had people from the community emailing us with information on guest rooms and cottages that they have that they would make available, or low-cost housing options. We've had counseling services there. And now that we've been declared a federal disaster area, FEMA will be arriving and bringing additional federal services to the local assistance center. So it's been a tremendous amount of work in a short period of time, all focused on providing the services to the people who are most impacted by the fire. So that's really, in a nutshell, what we've been doing. I did want Santos Escobar to just give you a brief overview of the damage to some of our parks. Mr. Escobar?
Before Santos starts, I had an opportunity to go over to the center this morning, and I think probably everyone knows someone who was affected, and it's just been devastating to so many families and so many members of our community. But to walk in that door and have people greet them, ask them their needs, send them to the right place, the people that were there from the community to help out, from the chamber, the bar association, as well as, the trailer set up for the insurance companies. It was good to see the community wrap their arms around the people who have been most affected, and I was really pleased to see, how many of our staff were involved and how caring they were, and I think we all kind of feel that way, and it's nice to see it happening on such a tangible level for people when they really need it. So, I hope we can continue this into the future to support all those families. So thank you.
Chair Longstreet, Park Recreation Commissioners, just as a quick overview of our T-Fire park damage. As you're well aware, Palmer Park is burnt. We have over 200 acres that have burnt, and we're currently assessing the damage as we speak. There still is many flare-ups in the areas, and we have lots of fire personnel in the area currently stationed at the park itself. The ironic thing is at the park where there is a picnic area, the picnic tables did not burn, nor did the park sign burn. But we're currently assessing the damage, as I say, and we'll be going through throughout the rest of the week, assessing that and then putting it together a game plan. Regarding Schofield Park, a minor area of the Vans Meadow, which is off of Las Canoas Road, opposite of St. Mary's Seminary, that did burn. But the defensible space in that area that we continue to do saved Schofield Park, along with the firefighters going through with the helicopters and all the personnel. They were able to save Schofield and many homes off of Las Canoas Road. Also at Rattlesnake Park, that area there, the trailhead currently is closed because of the fact that that area burnt as well. And another ironic thing is the wooden park signs and such, the amenities as you go into the trailhead there, they are still standing as well. So it's very amazing. Backing up real quickly, though, back to Parma Park, the upper portion of Parma Park where the hang gliders land at, that section of park did burn, but some of the surrounding homes did survive because of the defensible vegetative fuels work that has been done throughout the many years, and this year was no exception. And because of that, that El Salito area was able to be saved. And once again, it's because of the fire personnel and defensible space. So back to just parks that are closed. Parma is closed. It's also signed. Rattlesnake Trailhead is closed to hikers and folks as well. And also Schofield Park is closed. Even though Schofield did not burn, with the exception of Vans Meadow and a little bit of the Creeklet, it's closed because of the fact that there is flare-ups occurring as we speak. So I'd like to suggest to the folks that are listening that if you're a looky-loo, please don't go in the area. Please just stay away and let personnel and folks that need to be in the area be there. But the looky-loos, please stay away from this area, because we do not need any traffic congestion and such, because you never know when emergency personnel needs to get through these roads. So that's what I'd like to let folks out know as well. So that's about it.
Sheffield. How did Sheffield fare?
Sheffield came out fine in regards to the Sheffield area. Just the Rockwood area, it would be Rockwood Creek area. There was a couple little parcels that actually burnt. No homes, to the best of my knowledge, were burnt in that little area there, but there were some parcels. When Nancy and myself were doing a tour yesterday, I showed her the couple parcels that did burn, but it may have been stated over the airways that it was burning, but it was able to be put out. So it was great work again.
And was the helicopter recharging area used there? I know that when it was being designed, there was the pad put in for helicopter landing, and so they could tap into the water there.
On that, I honestly don't know. I do know that at Santa Barbara Junior High on Thursday night, helicopters were dropping every
All
few
day
minutes,
Friday.
all night long, and that's where they were being fueled up and filled up and such. So,
Thank you, Santos, for that. Will the damage to Parma Park have any effect on the proposed improvements going forward?
we'll be assessing that also, Commissioner Forcell.
Thanks, that's a good report.
I think
Any
as we
other
go forward, the concerns with Parma is the Sycamore Creek area, concerns about flooding and all of that. So we are madly running from one meeting to the next with all the different folks that are involved to determine the best strategy in the time that we have before the rains come. So we'll be reporting back to you on things as we move forward.
Having a fire this late in the season in that big a watershed area is definitely a danger. Any other questions for staff on? Well, you know, big thanks to everybody within the city for pulling together. I think just the flow of information out with the news conferences and things were very helpful as a member of the public to me. So
You know, I turned on television, I saw the white Parks and Recreation bus ferrying people in and out. I thought, isn't that nice? They're really involved. So,
Okay, well, thank you all, and we'll move on, I guess, to our Youth Council report. Diego?
Thank you. It's pretty brief this month, but one focus that we were been talking about was we were planning a speak out on graffiti, and last month I said that it was going to be in December, but we have rescheduled that to January 8th because of the time, and it was too close, so we rescheduled it. And the place that we were thinking of that is in the process is Santa Barbara Santa Barbara High School in the auditorium, and that would take place about 6:30. But we're still in the process of making that official. As I reported last month as well, that the youth council is full now, where slots are full, and we have junior high representatives from all schools, from La Cumbre, La Colina, Santa Barbara, and Santa Barbara Middle School. And they are actually excited about taking the information to the junior highs and being a part of the youth council. But sadly, we had some news that one of our representatives from the junior high's house was burnt in the Tea Fire. But we want to send our regards to her. The youth council is also going to be collaborating with the CFF and the Teen Center on a canned food drive for them, and the drop-offs are going to be at the Teen Center and as well as at the office of 100 East Carrillo, the Teen Programs office, and most of it will be donated to the Casa de Esperanza. And that I want to acknowledge that one of our youth council members, Maggie McDermott, was chosen as one of the junior congressional page, and she will be moving in January to Washington, D.C., so wanted to put that out there. And I said also as well that last month we had an event at the Teen Center for the Red Ribbon Week, which was a lock-in where they got to stay at the Teen Center and have a fun time and fun activities. And that was actually a successful event. We had about 40 teens spend the night, and they had a really great time. But that's about it for the report this week. Oh, one more thing. I wanted to say thank you for the city council members and the ones from the Park and Rec Commission that attended the meet and greet we had this Monday. And that's about it, the report.
Thank you. I attended the meet and greet on Monday. Great young people, everybody just very friendly and outgoing. It was good to meet so many, especially the new junior high reps. It was great. So I had a good time. Thank you for having that and inviting us. Questions about the youth council report? Okay, we'll move to the consent calendar. Item 2, summary of council actions. Are there any questions or comments? I think we've kind of covered this already with the golf. We'll move to the approval of minutes.
and move to waive the reading and approve the minutes of the special meeting, our site visit on October 16th, 2008.
Okay. Is there a second?
Do we have that? Yeah, it's at the
Yes,
very
it's very
beginning.
brief.
Just the one page. You and I and BB were there.
I guess you're the second.
Yeah. This one here, Rocco.
Oh, there's not much.
It's just the one page.
Yeah, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. And now we move to October 22nd.
Well, I'd move for approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of October 22nd, 2008.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Second.
Okay, we have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passed.
Abstain.
And one abstention. Okay, we move to the Street Tree Advisory Committee items. Item 4A, which is the to approve the following street tree requests. I would let staff know we have public speakers for Item 4B2, a denial, and 4D2. Okay? So we have no speakers for 4A, 1, and 2. That's Mr. Downey.
Chair Longstreet, Commissioners, the item 1A, the reasons that they're requesting the removal were that they have a new driveway approach. The construction is almost complete on that property. The tree is declining. It's located in what will be the at the edge of the apron, so there will be some root pruning necessary for the curb cut for the driveway apron. Street Tree Advisory Committee staff recommend that you approve this removal on the condition that a new tree be placed in the front of the property and a new oak tree be placed on the Via Charisma side of the property where the old driveway apron was.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Downey? A motion?
Move to concur with the recommendation of the advisory committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, on to the next item, 4B-A2.
Commissioner Longstreet and Commissioners, the item A2 is also tied to item C1. I'd like to handle them both together. One of the trees is a street tree. The rest are setback trees, but they're all in line with each other if you would like to do that. The trees are located in a raised portion of the property adjacent to Les Wayne Road, and they lean out over the public roadway. They are situated poorly and are cracking interior sidewalks for the El Encanto Hotel. The reasons were that they were concerned for the safety of the trees because of the leaning over the roadway and the cracking of the sidewalks. Street Tree Advisory Committee and staff found that the trees were planted in the wrong location, and it made strong arboricultural sense to recommend these be approved.
Questions of staff?
I move to concur with staff and advisory committee recommendations regarding items 4A2 and 4C1.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Okay, that brings us to 4B1, deny the following street tree removals.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the tree at 1820 Gillespie is a Chinese flame tree. The reasons for the request is that it was difficult to get into and out of the driveway because of the root flare growing over the edge of the apron. The branches were over wires and they've experienced sewer problems. Upon investigation, the root flare does extend about 6 inches over the apron, the edge of the apron. However, the apron is a double driveway apron and is twice as wide as a normal apron, which allows for a little wider access. And it's our opinion that they don't necessarily have to hug that portion of the apron. The wires are not in direct contact at this time, and the tree is in good, healthy condition. Street Tree Advisory Committee staff recommend that you deny at this time.
Okay. Questions or a motion?
Move to concur with staff recommendations concerning item B1.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Passes. And now, after your presentation, Mr. Downey, we'll have public comment from the homeowner.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, item B2 is...
Can I stop you for just a minute,
Sure.
Tim? Madam Chair, I'm going to recuse myself from voting on this, as I have known Vicki Busby for a number of years, and I don't know if I could be impartial in this matter.
Okay, thank you.
20 Lorinda Place is a Mexican fan palm. The reasons stated were that the tree is in poor condition, it's breaking up meter boxes, was a threat to a main gas line that supplies gas to the cul-de-sac, that fronds fall off and they are a danger to people and property, and the tree, from most people's perspective, appears to be a telephone pole and is unattractive. Upon review, the tree is in excellent condition. It is in need of pruning. There are a number of layers of fronds that could be removed to reduce the fronds falling. The committee and staff determined that the remainder of the reasons were not reasons to remove the tree, and therefore, the Street Advisory Committee staff recommend you deny this request.
Okay. Ms. Busby, would you like to come up and...
Yes, I'm Vicki Busby, and I live at 20 Lorinda Place, and this palm tree has not been trimmed or serviced or anything for years, and it's very top-heavy. It is very dangerous. The palm fronds fly off onto the parked cars, and almost nearly missed one of the neighbors and myself when we were out there in the front yard. The palm fronds during wet and rainy seasons will drop what I call frond juice. It's like a sap, and it ruins the paint on the cars parked there in front of the house or even across the street. It is very tall. It's about 8 to 10 stories high. You cannot even see the palm part of the tree when you're coming down the street. It's a very short cul-de-sac of 10 homes. That's 5 homes on each side. So when the neighbors are going up and down the street, they can't even see the palm tree. All you see is this huge, ugly-looking telephone pole, and it's right in the middle of my property. So if the neighbors are looking at my house, they see this huge, ugly-looking telephone pole, and same way as me looking out, as well as the neighbors going up and down the street. All 10 neighbors have signed the request for the city to remove the tree, and it is also a haven for rats, and it is infested with rats. For all the big black birds that come in and swarm in and kill the rats and you know, pick up half-dead rats and fly around on the roof, and it's a nightmare. But it is very dangerous during the winds and when the palms fly off. And also, not only is it just serves no purpose there. And like I said, it's ruining the paint job. It's ruined the paint job on my truck that's parked there. And I don't even park it underneath it. I park it away from it. And the cars across the street, the neighbors, it's ruining their paint jobs on their cars parked. Okay. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And also the main gas line that services the whole street runs underneath and right through the middle of the tree.
Thank you. You mentioned it could be trimmed, that those fronds could be taken out. Could it be banded at the same time? Or do we ban trees?
It's not a common practice for us to ban tree. Anytime you ban a tree, it restricts the flow of moisture in the outer layers and can cause decline of the tree. We can prune the tree and remove the approximately 12 feet of dead fronds, which would decrease any habitat for other animals that may be causing problems.
What about the gas line issue? We don't usually hear of palm trees with invasive roots. I can't think of the times we've had invasive palm tree roots.
Chair Longstreet, the roots of a palm are fleshy, about the diameter of your finger. and they just grow out into the soil. By themselves, they tend to just grow where they can find space and are not really designed in such a way that they would push on items. Wrap around, yes. The gas company has not expressed any concerns with any palms that run over their lines. I have not made personal contact with them in this case, but I've never heard of palm roots causing problems for gas lines.
Okay. We can't hear you when you're back there, and it isn't a give and take. Sorry. Are there any other questions for staff on this item?
A couple of questions. One, how old is that palm tree, number one? And number two, is that part of the landscape before that it was sponsored by the city of Santa Barbara or the neighbors?
The second part of your question, Commissioner Gonzalez, it's undetermined who planted the tree. There are a number of trees of equal size on private property in the area, but I don't have a record of who planted the tree. As far as age, I would guess to be about 30 years.
30 years. Is there if it would be approved to be removed, is there an alternative to that situation? I mean, you're going to get another tree. If they, what kind of a trees would you recommend?
Commissioner Gonzalez, the designated species for that street is peppermint gum eucalyptus. I would have to consider closely whether we would want to plant the eucalyptus in that space because of its roots and the adjacent gas line. We tend to not plant trees of that type within 6 feet of a utility, and we couldn't avoid planting it right on top of that gas line if we were to choose to plant the official street tree.
Okay. Other questions? I mean, I would agree that palm trees are not the ones you look out your house and be happy with, but they do add to the overall skyline of our community, and that's really our purview. So, it's a tough call when it's the one in front of your house, but it does make a huge difference in the overall landscape of our community. So,
I do have a question. Can you just repeat what the steps that you think can be taken to mitigate or deal with the rat problem or the vermin problem?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Hall, the rats tend to congregate in areas where they can hide during the day. Palm trees is one of those sources. If the lower portions of the palm fronds are removed, it decreases the hideability of the palm tree, and likely they would seek other locations. They likely are not living in that space. They probably just are residing there as during the daytime and foraging at night.
okay. What is the Commission's pleasure? Do I hear a motion?
I move to concur with the recommendation of staff and the Street Tree Advisory Commission or Committee. Second.
And there's a second. Any discussion? I would like to see it put on the list quickly to have those to be trimmed, to have the fronds done.
It will be.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. One abstention. You were recused. Yes. Yes. Okay, now it brings us to item C2. Oh, and this is appealable within 10 days to the City Council. Okay.
Commissioner Longstreet and Commissioners, the item C2 is the 514 West Anapamu. there are two approximately 35 feet tall Canary Island pines in the setback. The property has been placed on notice by Public Works to repair the public sidewalk because of the damage the roots are providing, lifting the sidewalk. So they're requesting to remove these trees because they need to make those repairs. Street Advisory Committee and staff determined that due to the current condition of these trees and the amount of root pruning necessary for the sidewalk repairs, it would be prudent to approve these removals. Street Advisory Committee and staff recommend approval on the condition that the applicant plant two 24-inch Brisbane box trees in the parkway to be maintained by the city.
Okay. Questions of staff? Motion?
Move to concur with staff recommendations regarding C2.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. And this brings us to C3. That's Alta Vista, and we saw this last month. I don't think we need to go back over it. We have no one here to discuss it. Is everybody remember this one? Oh,
Chair
Yeah.
Longstreet, I do have something to add.
okay.
I was contacted today by one of the women that spoke at the last meeting, and they are advising me that the owner and the manager are not wanting to move forward with the application. However, I have not received any communication from those individuals. I advised her that if this commission approved the removals and the owner and the manager did not want to move forward with those removals, they were not required to.
That's the deal.
So I wanted to share that with you.
Yes, definitely. We're not going to go over and take their tree off their private property. Okay. Can I hear a motion on this one? Is there?
I'd move to concur with staff recommendations regarding item C3.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All righty. And now we are to item D, deny the following setback trees. One is 3607 San Jose Lane. And we have no speakers for this item.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the tree at 3607 San Jose Lane is a red flowering gum eucalyptus. The request was due to the tree was too big and messy and had invasive roots. I'm sorry, I misspoke. This is a Tipuana-Tipu tree. Excuse me. The Street Advisory Committee and staff determined the reasons were not valid to remove the tree and recommend that you deny.
Okay, thank you. Questions of staff? Motion?
Move to concur with the recommendation of staff and the Street Tree Advisory Committee.
Okay.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, and now we're to D2, and we have 2, 4. We do have 5 speakers for this item, so.
Commissioner Longstreet and Commissioners, the item was reviewed at our August meeting. At that meeting, this commission requested that we come back once we obtain some information regarding the feasibility of moving the wall into the public right-of-way and whether moving that wall into the public right-of-way would jeopardize the designation of the wall as historic. Since that time, I've had conversations with other city staff about these items. It is feasible through negotiation to obtain an easement to move the wall into the public right-of-way. However, moving that wall into the public right-of-way would seriously jeopardize the chances that the wall would be able to become a landmark. The staff believes that the roots on this tree can be pruned and the wall put back in place. That will jeopardize the future of the tree and risk the wall of further damage. However, we feel that's the appropriate step to take. Staff would like to be present during any root pruning to determine whether the tree would become unstable for that work. The Historic Landmarks Commission had some comments that I'd like to invite Jaime Limon up to share their comments.
Mr. Limon, welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm representing the Planning Division, specifically Mr. Jake Jacobus, who works for me. He's our city's urban historian. He's feeling ill today, so I'm filling in for him. What he wanted to convey to you is that we did have a discussion at our Historic Landmarks Commission on this issue. Specifically, the request was to consider what the impacts would be of this tree on the historic wall. And what I wanted to convey to you is just some information that you should be aware of it before you make a decision. There is some concern about Parks' recommendation regarding keeping the tree in place, and specifically the minutes regarding that hearing on August 20th were that the commission, the majority of the commission, 5 of the 8, felt that the wall should be preserved for future landmarking, and that the eucalyptus tree should be removed and replaced with an attractive skyline tree at an appropriate location with less invasive, and which would be less invasive and not affect the wall. And I wanted to explain why that was the case. We have extensive historic resource reports that have identified the Marymount Academy campus and the associated estates. And if I'd like to quote specifically out of these reports, that identifies that these walls surrounding the property represent one of the earliest and best examples of masonry construction in the neighborhood, if not the city. And the walls are the most extensive and elaborate constructions of their type in the city surrounding this entire area. And they represent an important visual component of the built environment. And given the history of it, there is a preference or desire for the Landmarks Commission to designate it in the future. There have actually been requests to forward it to our designation subcommittee. So I can't report to you today that those walls are designated, but what would happen, and I want to clarify this point, is there's the criteria and significance actually can meet National Register criteria. It's quite historic. And given that, I think I wanted to convey that the preference of the Commission would to have that wall not be relocated. If it is relocated, there might be some folks that would believe that that would lose its National Register criteria, significance, eligibility. We could still probably designate it a local landmark, but again, of course, the location of the wall as currently placed would be not authentic. And so I wanted just to make sure that you understand the feelings of the Historic Landmarks Commission. It was a split decision. There were some minority, in the minority that felt that there should be some allowance to have the wall relocated. So I just wanted to mention that to you. Hope that helps.
Not really, but you know.
Forthright.
Well, we might as well be honest here.
Chair Longstreet, one thing I forgot to mention, I apologize. The earlier this month at the Street Advisory Committee meeting, we visited the site again with that new information shared with them, and they have held with their opinion that the tree should remain.
I'm very concerned that any root pruning on a tree that size would happen. So that's a big one. Let's move to the public comment at this point. I would start with Sharon Sumrall, followed by Eric Gabrielson. And if you could hold your comments to 2 minutes, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sharon Sumrall. I'm a landscape contractor for the Gabrielsons. I'm also on the Franceschi Park Advisory Committee. And as I said before when I was up here, I am not about to wanting to remove trees. I plant trees. I love trees. I'm on the Franceschi Park Advisory Committee. But I just made some quick notes so I wouldn't talk over and over. Eucalyptus trees live an average of 60 years when they're not in their native environment. That's just, eucalyptus are not native and they don't last, okay? They are known as widow makers, okay, for their fragility of their limbs. I mean, everybody that's had eucalyptus on their property has had their tree guys out to trim them, and they've seen huge limbs come down, and we're all aware of their impact as fuel for fire. And I saw a lot of that on 2 properties of 2 of my clients that burned. More important for me is why I'm here is that the wall has got a lot of local history to it. And the walls, if you've walked the property, are beautiful on both Marymount and on my client's side. They're beautiful walls. And I happen to revere walls, and I think they'll last hundreds of years as opposed to 60 to 100 years on a eucalyptus tree. And I say, let's plant another tree back further. Let's plant 2 trees. Let's plant 3 trees. But the historic value of that wall being there for hundreds of years, way when we're all long past gone, it's important to me. On the Franceschi Park Advisory Committee, we value the walls that are WPA built and the steps that we have, and we don't do anything to those. We work around them, and we've spent a lot of time on the walls of Franceschi Park figuring out how we're going to rebuild them without working with the integrity of them. So I'm all for the walls, even though I hate to see that tree go.
Thank you. Mr. Gabrielson? And Mr. Gabrielson will be followed by Lauren Troiani.
Thank you. I'm the property owner at 2132 Mission Ridge, and the entrance is very much, I think, of great value to the community, and that seems to be the issue in our mind, is that law of physics says we can't have 2 objects in one place. The tree has taken over the space of the wall. A very important aspect of the grandeur of the wall and the entry and the historic look of it is that it is symmetrical, and the walls wing out in to either side of the entrance. And so I think this idea that the walls can be moved and sort of jogged and moved over the years as the roots continue to grow will truly compromise the look of this historic structure. The other thing that I did want to point out, obviously this past week we were evacuated out of our property, and I returned the following day, and I can tell you that the trees that I was watching very closely were the eucalyptus trees that were on and around our property. The third thing that I would like you to consider is that, as Sharon said, these trees are referred to as widowmakers, and this tree is located such that it not only hangs over our driveway, but more importantly, it hangs over Marymount's parking area. And this parking area is a very busy area where moms and dads drop their kids off on a daily basis. And the idea that a branch could fall and hit a kid or parents, I think, has to be considered. So really, the idea of trying to save a eucalyptus tree, which to most of the residents in the area are maybe hazardous, versus compromising this historic structure, seems like a no-brainer to me. But I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Lauren Troiani, and Lauren will be followed by Frank Hotchkiss, and then Craig Bassell.
Yes, I'm Lauren Troiani. I am a current parent of Marymount. I am an alum of Marymount, and I am now currently on the Board of Trustee, and I am the new chair of the Buildings and Ground. What I can tell you is that as a board, we have not officially addressed this issue. As a committee, we've only discussed it in an information gathering in terms of bringing up the history that when this tree and this proposal has been brought up, and that we are going to be, in fact, here today representing our school if need be. What I can say that we discussed is that we very much value our relationship with our neighbors, the Gabrielsons. They are very gracious neighbors, and we hope this never becomes a contentious issue. We don't intend it to be in any way. They have opened up their home. We all very much appreciate the historic value of is it El Cerrito? I completely just forgot. For our 70th anniversary. And I, too, am in an architecture background, and I completely appreciate the value of the historic wall and the state and the Gabrielsons' concern. What I can say on a personal, since I cannot officially speak for the board, I know that I would just be concerned that our school would not endure any kind of unnecessary financial hardship with this undertaking, and that hopefully that we can have a meeting of the minds of these different commissions in what would be an appropriate resolution of this matter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Hotchkiss.
Hi, I live at 2141 Mission Ridge, which is right across the street, and am here in a totally self-serving capacity because if that tree goes, I'm in the line of fire. It's about, 80, 90 feet tall, I guess? Yeah, that's just about right through the living room in my house. So I would ask and introduce a new element here, not so much historic preservation, but preservation of life and limb, that you give good consideration to removing that tree. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Brazell.
Craig Bazell, business manager at Marymount. Been involved in this project for some time since it got started. And I've had quite a few conversations with Mr. Downey on what are the options. I've also had tree trimmers. I've had stonemasons out looking at it and seeing how it could be done with the tree in place, how it could be done with the tree removed. Probably impossible with the tree in place. And then I heard today in talking with Mr. Downey the possibility of trimming the root ball. That makes me very nervous. It's a huge tree, and we're going to have to trim 2 of the 4 sides substantially. And as you said, it might be okay for the short term, maybe not the long term. That, as Frank Hotchkiss said, is one tree we don't want to fall. I lost a tree just close to it Christmas Eve. The city was calling me on my cell phone as I'm driving down the road, 10 o'clock last Christmas Eve, because Mission Ridge was closed. And I was able to find a tree trimmer. They could clear it up quickly, and by 11 o'clock it was done. If this one comes down, it'll be there for days, and there will be no access while they're trying to clear that. There'll be no access on Mission Ridge. That might be kind of far-fetched, but that is concern, I think, something we have to look at simply because of everything else that has been going on with the trees coming down and burning and that sort. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public comment section, and it is back to the commission. Are there questions for
Chair
Yes.
Longstreet? Just because this is unusual, and it may just be me, and I want to make sure that I'm understanding this. The tree is on the Marymount property, and because Mr. Gabrielson identified himself as the property owner, that's the property adjacent. So I just wanted to make sure that this is very unusual for us not to be dealing directly with the property owner. So I don't know if Mr. Downey wants to add anything. There was additional material in the earlier report, I believe, just for clarification.
The applicant is the neighbor to the property where the tree is located. The school and the neighbors have all been involved in this process at both of these meetings. They've both provided information to you that has been included in your packets. It is a bit unusual that a neighbor would request the removal of the tree, but both parties are aware and have been involved in the process.
So, Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the piece that then becomes important is, should you agree that the tree be removed with the understanding that the wall be moved forward through the city's process to be identified as a historic landmark and be repaired, it would require that it be repaired back to an acceptable state. That's a cost. I think if you were going to look at that, the two things should be tied together, and I am concerned that because normally we're dealing with the property owner and they are assuming the fiscal cost for that. So there, you may want to ask a few more questions if you decide to go in that direction. And if you do determine that it's, appropriate to remove the tree to protect the historic nature of the wall, you might want to tie the removal very closely into approved plans for repair to the wall and landmark status. That would be my just additional comments.
Chair Longstreet, one other thing. Yes. Just to further clarify, the Gabrielsons are the applicants. Being a setback tree, the cost then for the removal by filling out the application becomes theirs. I believe there's been some negotiation between the neighbors with that issue, but by the paperwork that was filled out, the applicant bears the cost of the removal of the tree.
Okay.
Let me just be certain about the one point that Ms. Rapp just brought up. In moving the wall to allow for the tree to continue to remain where it is, would jeopardize the historic landmark designation. Because at that point, it may be that it no longer is considered historic, or it may be more difficult to get the designation because you've taken a wall and you've moved it 6 feet and it's not. Okay, so I just want to be absolutely certain about that. Do you want to comment on?
Comments.
Okay. This isn't unusual. I don't think I've seen this in the 6 years I've been hanging around here. We've seen many times where people have talked about eucalyptus trees and others, but particularly eucalyptus, in that they were concerned about fire, or they were concerned that a branch was going to break off and fall in their living room. And if the tree is healthy, we have not generally recommended removal under those circumstances, and we have at times trimmed or done other things that might provide some kind of protection. But for that reason alone, if the tree is healthy, we generally do not recommend removal. This being a somewhat different situation involving this wall and the historic nature of the wall, and it does seem to me that it would be a bit absurd to move the wall 6 feet. That, is this to save this tree, that maybe, this tree needs to go and another tree needs to take its place, that's set back a little further from the wall. But from what I've heard so far, I would not be in favor of the option of moving the wall around.
I agree. I don't believe that that's really a viable alternative at this point. I have some grave concerns about root pruning it also. The size of that tree, it does not make me comfortable that we would mess with the roots on something 80 to 90 feet tall. So other comments or concerns? But I do agree we're not going to take this tree down until as we would do with someone building a driveway. We ask that the plans be approved and that we know that this is really going to happen. So is it possible that we craft a motion that has this move forward through historic landmarks? I don't know what kind of timeline you would have for that. And that it move on that, and that as soon as that process is underway, then the tree could be removed.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, if Mr. Lamone doesn't mind if I put him on the spot, perhaps you might, just in terms of understanding the direction that the Commission wants to go and your familiarity with that process, would you like to provide?
Sure. Madam Chair, Commissioners, I think it would be premature to say that you should direct them to designate the wall. That is the Council's prerogative to do that designation. However, in the past, when applicants have pursued development or a proposal, And typically, there's a condition that says that the applicant will not object to the initiation of the designation process. So something to that effect would be appropriate. We don't want a person to go away thinking they can take the wall out, as you say, the tree out, and then object to the designation proposal that the City Landmarks Commission would move forward with. So something to that effect, that they would not object to that designation. Now, if you want to tie the removal to the actual designation date, that could conceivably be months out, because we do have a referral process and a priority on designations.
No, I agree that's beyond our purview to start.
Can we turn it over? Okay, here's another alternative. Can we say that we would approve, we would turn it over to the historic landmarks to tie it to the wall in that way, that they would guide this process in the future?
I think it would be appropriate that if you actually make a motion that says that you approve of the tree removal and refer it back to the Landmarks Commission for appropriate approval of, as Nancy says, in the reconstruction of the wall or whatever has to be repaired, since it's been damaged at this point, there would be some concern about, and then we can pursue that designation process.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that this is a question of tree versus wall, I'm ready to vote for the wall. But to me, the designation, the historic designation, is actually secondary to the wall being restored. And so, given that what we have is a sort of general idea of where the school is coming from within their internal process for taking a position on this, but we don't have an official position from the school saying we want to preserve the wall, we're going to put money into preserving the wall, or this is how we're going to split the costs of restoring the wall with the neighbor, etc. It's a little bit abstract for us to vote now on saying tree out, wall in. I mean, at this point, all we're voting on is tree out, and there's a kind of like wall that's kind of half crumbling, etc. And that I'm not prepared to vote on right now. So I guess what I'm saying is my concern is not so much the designation, the historic landmarks designation, which has its own process, will take a while and is completely out of our hands, both in terms of a local designation, let alone a national designation. But any motion that we pass tonight, I would like to see contingent on seeing a plan from the property owner and or the neighboring property owner about that we are in fact removing a tree so that a wall can be restored and repaired, etc. So that's really my concern. Is it more than the designation thing is really secondary, even tertiary for me.
What about staff? I could use some assistance with it. A motion that stated we concur with the removal of the tree contingent upon presentation of a plan to restore the wall with the Historic Landmarks Commission.
Well, we can't concur with that because of the recommendation is to deny it.
Yeah, we recommend the removal contingent upon a Historic Landmarks Commission approval of a wall restoration. Is that does that cover what we're talking here?
Carla, could you read that back one more time? I was just rereading the Historic Landmarks minutes just to see if that helped.
Recommend approval of the removal of the tree contingent on presentation of a plan to restore the wall with the Historic Landmarks Commission. Sound right?
I would second that, but if that's not sort of legislatively kosher, we also don't have to vote on it tonight.
Well, just to clarify, the commission's venue is the tree removal. The concern is you're making a decision based on an argument to preserve a historic wall. What you're trying to do is tie the restoration of the historic wall to the removal of the tree. And so that's really the question. So the whole issue of who's the property owner and who's going to pay is not really, as long as that's the action, because that's between the applicant and the school.
I think we want to add that the tree will be removed at the time of restoration of the wall.
And we
Right?
probably,
With plans approved by the
Well, at the time
Historic
of the
Landmark
restoration, when
Commission.
that work needs to be done is when the tree needs to be out of there, not before, really.
and the other thing we probably need to talk about is a replacement tree or multiple trees, as
Okay.
the lady mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And that's where the issue of who's going to pay for it and the two different property owners and so forth is relevant, because as Chair Longstreet pointed out, and generally when we're approving or not approving tree removals because of restoration plans or new landscaping or new construction and so forth, we're given it's a done deal by that point, like what's going to happen, and we're looking at it as a whole project, and we don't have that project in front of us right now. So either some kind of contingent motion I'd be happy to vote for, or just not making a decision either way tonight until we have that in front of us. But hopefully the applicants understand where the commission's at in terms that we are absolutely, seems like nobody's voiced the opposite. We're absolutely willing to remove the tree in order to have the wall be restored.
All right, I don't think it's imperative that we do this tonight, and I really don't think we should make a motion without having more information about it. So I think DeRocca has laid it out pretty well where we stand on the issue, but I think that we should put it off to the next meeting or the meeting after, whenever they're ready, and have them bring back maybe some preliminary plans, some idea of what replacement trees would be, something more to go on, as DeRocca says, so we're not kind of flying by the seat of our pants on this.
Okay. Do we need a motion to table that?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
I move to table item D, 4D1,
Second.
4D2, sorry. Thank you for your support, Steve, but I was wrong.
I support you again.
4D2, until such time that the applicant is able to present requested information.
I will again support you with a second.
Okay, and I will just add, I think you have our guidance, you know where we're going with it. And if you need anything more, please, I think staff will have all that you need. With that, I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We'll see you again. All right. This brings us to our administrative and staff reports. That was Los Baños deep end deep end wall replacement and replastering project.
Chair Longstreet and Commission, as we have been apprising you, we have undertaken a significant repair at the Los Baños pool. We made you aware of all of our relocation of swim activities over the summer, and so Aquatic Supervisor Rich Hanna and our pool technician Dean Carr are here to give you an overview of the project.
Thank you, Ms. Rapp. Good evening, Chair Longstreet and Commissioners. It is my pleasure to be here tonight to put this project to rest. And although I was there through many of the project discussions, Dean Carr was on site during the entire project, and I'm going to have him speak to a lot of the pictures that we have leading into this presentation. Just a quick project history. I just want to review what led us to this decision to take out the deep end wall. But in 1995, there was some pool work done to the deck and the equipment room. Shortly thereafter, the pool began leaking through a cold joint, and we were unable to seal it through the period of that time. In 2007, the city hired Raleigh International to perform a study and recommend a method of repair. And during that time, it was recommended a couple of recommendations were discussed. One was to take out a portion of the wall, and as we moved forward, it was apparent that we may need to take out the entire pool wall, and we'll talk more about that as we go through the presentation. 2008, Condor Incorporated was awarded the project for the deep end wall removal, and we were fortunate enough to include the replaster into this project, the replaster of Los Baños. The timeline changed a little bit as we were going through the project. However, we started about a week early. We started June 16th. and we actually finished a week earlier, which was the August 24th completion date. And the project, again, called for the removal and replacement of the entire deep end wall. We were going to remove and prepare the new pool plaster, modify existing ladder anchors so that we had uniformity with all the ladders in the pool, repair pool tile, scheduled facility maintenance that we can't always get to because we're open for such long hours, replaster the pool shell, and then allow the plaster to cure, and then the water treatment before we reopened. Just to highlight, during this closure, it was during the summertime, so some of these programs that we host at Los Baños were shifted out. We had come to commission and talked about the relocation of programs to Ortega and Oak. Prior to the project starting, we had limited time at Santa Barbara High School, and we had not had any confirmation back from San Marcos and Dos Pueblos High School. However, through, I would say, some tough negotiating, we were fortunate enough to locate 24 of our 44 hours of city programming over to Santa Barbara High School, which allowed us to offer 100% of our programming just on an augmented schedule. The Santa Barbara Swim Club age group and master's program was able to offer 31 of the 33 hours that they typically rented from Los Baños at those high schools as well. And then we were fortunate this year that we had a great warm summer. The water temperature was unseasonably warm. It was averaging close to 72 degrees, 70 to 72, something similar to what you would see in San Diego. So we had a lot of our summer programs go to the beach instead of recreation swim at Los Baños. So we're very fortunate with the weather, and I can't take any credit for that, unfortunately. As far as participant communication, I believe we got out ahead of this. We had a lot of interest from local media, I think partly because it was going to be closing the main aquatic facility in the city limits during the summertime. However, I think we did a good job of getting information out, explaining what our intent was. We had an alternative schedule for people to go and swim. And then periodically throughout the program, we would come out, throughout the project, we would come out with a letter linking them to our website. We would hand this out. We would email it out to pass holders, and they could go to our website and look at a lot of the pictures that we'll be showing you tonight, so they could actually see the magnitude of this project as it was moving forward. So from this point, I'm just going to have Dean Carr kind of take you through the pictures that you'll be seeing as we come through the presentation.
Chair Longstreet, Commissioners. The first picture on the left there you see is the plumbing that existed in Los Baños. That all had to be removed in order to take the wall out. The picture on the right, it's a little dark on the right-hand side of the picture, but they had to reinforce the ceiling so it wouldn't come down during the construction phase of the project. And so that happened about a week before we were still open for programming, so they came in and reinforced that ceiling there, and then they went in and took out that plumbing you see on the left. The picture on the right there, that's the first phase of taking out that wall. They were able to punch through. That is the basement on the other side of that wall. It's approximately 18 inches thick, and then that's the equipment room for Los Baños Pool. Once that wall was removed, then they proceeded to chip out the plaster, which you see on the left there. And there's another picture looking straight down from the shallow end of the pool. And they had to build a ramp on what we call the L section there, and they bring in a little bobcat, and they were able to just scoop it out and then drive it out to the back parking lot and put it in a dumpster. This is a picture we had initially. You'll see at the top of those pictures is the bottom of the pool. And the picture on the left there, that's the reinforcing rebar. It's actually going below the floor of the pool. So this is important for us because this dictated that the project going all the way down to the floor was the right phase of the project. It was what we needed to do rather than take out a partial wall. You can see that rebar. If we would have done a partial wall, that could have blown out at the bottom there, and then we would have had to start all over from scratch. And so a little extra cost. We ended up going down below the floor of the pool, all the way down to the floor into the basement there, and then they had to start from there rather than the bottom of the pool. The picture on the left is the reinforcement, all the rebar. You'll see the plumbing there coming through. Bruce and Amanda, our city inspectors, came in once this was all put in. They had to sign it off. And you can't see them very well, but if you look on the picture on the right at the very top on the pool deck there, that's the two contractors that came in that did this work. It appears they're praying over this inspection. And the shotcrete came in once it was signed off. Another contractor came in, and the shotcrete is poured, or rather it's pumped in and sprayed over it, and then it's troweled over. And the picture on the right there is what we call the scum gutter. They actually build that as it's going, and it happens all in one day. And this is a finished product there on the left, and then they're going to do the wall there on the right, and that's just a platform for the work that's going on. And the tile line above there, it's all done by hand, and they make sure it's straight. They use laser levels in order to make the pool straight. This is a good picture here for a maintenance perspective. You'll see an expansion joint on the left there, and that's the bottom of the pool. You'll see that black line at the bottom of the wall there. It's an expansion joint. And you can see to the picture on the right there that we've eliminated that expansion joint. So now that expansion joint is supposed to be white. You can see in that picture there it's black. All it does is bring in dirt. Algae starts to grow in it because you can't get the dirt out of it. And so we were quite happy that the engineers allowed us to remove that joint, and without any problems with the pool shell itself. So now for maintenance-wise, it was a nice project of the phase. And here's how they're pumping in some plaster on the walls there, and then they'll trowel it on. On the right there, they're working their way up from the deep end. They're almost to the end of the shallow end of the pool. And we're back to that picture where we had to take out that plumbing, and that's our new wall on the right there with the new plumbing installed. And we put water in. It took about a week for the water to clear up once we put it in. The water is now heating also, and this is what it looks like now, except without the lane lines in. Came out quite nice.
Thanks, Dean. I just wanted to comment on a couple of other decisions that we made. Not only was the decision to eliminate the expansion line just a cosmetic improvement to the pool, but probably every 2 years we would drain the pool and have to replace that expansion line at a cost of somewhere in the vicinity of $10,000. So having that discussion with some of the engineers and being able to move forward by eliminating that and alleviating some of our structural concerns was a big improvement, and we're hoping that moving forward that'll save a lot of additional maintenance that we have to do. We also changed the lane line tile plaster from black to royal blue. You can see that back in this picture here. We received, I guess, some comments. I think people were so happy to be back in the pool that they didn't really pay attention to the color of the tile on the bottom of the pool. And we additionally added markings on the actual blue lane line tiles as you go down the pool. We have a red marker tile at the halfway point, so swimmers that are swimming know when they're halfway down Los Baños. And we have a couple that are 15 meters off of each wall, which is used for competition purposes, so swimmers know when they have to come up from underwater swimming during a competition. The team, briefly, there's a lot of people that were involved in the project, but like I said, Dean was there the entire time. Lucille Boss, my pool manager, handled a lot of the program changes out at the other sites, and I was fortunate to be there. We can't thank Parks Forestry to come down and trim the trees prior to the plaster process. Irrigation staff, we did have some small issues related to cracked lines, and they were there very quickly. And we just can't thank our engineers, our inspectors, and building maintenance for really chipping in. We were able to completely maintain the facility while it was closed during this time, and everybody there was involved and got it done. Condor Incorporated, the construction company, was excellent. They handled every phase of it, and were the reason that we got this project done on time and on budget. And we've already talked about the Santa Barbara School District. Their ability to let us use their swimming facilities for this period of time was just what made it all go off without a hitch. Just to highlight some of the additional maintenance that we haven't covered, we replaced our 1,000-gallon chlorine storage tank. We modified our pool ladders. The basement ceiling was repaired when we did the wastewater connection out for the pool to drain into the wastewater instead of the ocean that it used to do. We had some areas in the basement that we needed fixed. They went ahead and did that at no additional cost. We replaced the pool deck expansion line. So up on the deck between the building and the deck, we replaced all of that line and was still able to do that underneath budget. I talked about the red distance markers. We painted the entire facility. Again, building maintenance came in and did a great job. We were able to do some shower work in there that we can never get into. The facility received an extensive cleaning, and then the Friends of Los Baños, who we have a great relationship with, donated new shower mats. So when people came in, when we finally reopened, although they'd been put out for 8 to 10 weeks, I think they were really happy to be there, and we had some really nice things to greet them when they walked in the door. Just want to highlight one of I guess you could say there was a lot of challenges going forward with this project, but this was probably the largest. This is the Gap Fire. Wednesday before the 4th of July Semana Nautica swim meet, which is a 2.5-day swim meet that was scheduled for Dos Pueblos, the Gap Fire kind of took off in Goleta, and Dos Pueblos became a staging area, and San Marcos became a shelter. The swim event is a long course swim meet, and so between Wednesday and probably Wednesday evening at 5 and Thursday at 5, there was a lot of discussion with Southern California Swimming. Could we take a long course meet, make it a short course meet, air quality decisions? Sarah Hanna, Nancy Rapp, Jill Zachary, Judith Cook. We were able to negotiate with the school district to allow us to move this entire 3-day swim meet to Santa Barbara High School. So we ended up with approximately 300 swimmers from across California every day competing at Santa Barbara High School, and the meet would traditionally host about 450 a day. So all in all, although we had to put up with the fire and some of the air quality conditions, the meet did go off without a hitch. Just a quick program comparison. At Santa Barbara High School, we were able to serve almost 2,500 city program participants. The Santa Barbara Swim Club did see a 20% decline. They attribute a lot of that to the fact that they were traveling to different sites. They did have their head coach was the Olympic coach for the open water ocean swimming. So he was unavailable to do some last-minute updates to the website and scheduling issues, so they felt there was a little bit of attrition there. And then totally we lost about a 5% reduction, and I would attribute most of that to the fact that we didn't have our recreation swim. We serve over 1,000 kids during the summertime during our recreation swim program at Los Baños, and we didn't get that walk-in traffic from the hotels that neighbor Los Baños. Since we've reopened, the swim club has boomed. They call it the Michael Phelps effect, and their numbers are completely back up, and they're actually busting at the seams. And we have seen, I would say, all of our participants come back. Total project cost was a little over $500,000. Most of that was spent in the project contract, and we were able to do little things inside the project with change orders that allowed us to get some of those additional items that I talked about completed, but still keep the project on budget. And city engineering's cost of that was $70,000. And then the funding ultimately came from our Parks and Rec capital program for $261,000. I feel like I'm the small fish up there. I think I threw in $10,000. And the Public Works Facility Maintenance Program put in the $240,000. And that was really earmarked for the replaster that we were going to have to deal with it at least this coming fiscal year, if not the following fiscal year. So to be able to move that funding forward and get it all done at one time and inconvenience our swimmers just one time, I think is a great part of this project. And that completes my presentation of the Los Baños Deep End Wall Replacement and Replastering Project. And if you have any questions, I'm sure Dean and I can answer them for you.
Any questions for Rich?
No, only congratulations on a project that seemed to go on for an awful long time before it really got off the ground, and then it did get done well. I know we've talked about it several times here, and it's one to put away in our back pocket now. That's always good.
Diego?
Yeah, I just want to throw out a comment. That looked like a lot of work. But it's great to see how it process was and how it was, how it came out to be. But congratulations on the project.
Yeah, that having spent many an hour at that pool, it's really, I like seeing all the way through to the equipment room there. That's pretty interesting. It must have been fascinating, and it's how good to get all of that stuff done, because it's been now 12 years since the rehab. So it's time really to do all those things again with the use that pool gets. So good job.
Correct. Thank you again, Commissioner Longstreet and Commissioners. And I encourage you, you can still go to the City Parks and Rec Aquatic webpage. We have all the pictures up there. There's Dean took, I don't know, probably 10 pictures a day. So you can see different views looking from the basement out into the pool area and vice versa. And just looking at how many people were involved with, just that plastering. There was probably 40 people in the pool at one time all working together. So I encourage you to visit the website if you haven't already, just to look at some additional pictures. And thank you again.
Thank you, and thanks to all our partners, too, all the people that helped out to make it work smoothly over the summer. I think that's a great citywide team effort, so thank you. Okay, so that brings us to capital program update.
Chair Longstreet and Commission, each year at this time we bring you our capital program. This is actually a broader capital program than we brought to you last year. This is the 6-year capital, and staff has been working on this. I do want to, she already left, but our team that put the capital program together this year, Jill Zachary, Billy Goodnick, Kevin Strasberg, did an outstanding job. We got compliments from the Public Works staff that have coordinated this process for the last umpteen years at just how thorough and well prepared our department's submittal was, and that's due to a lot of the hard work by those 3 staff to anticipate what our park and recreation facility needs are and work with staff and come up with some good plans and cost estimate. So Billy Goodnick, who's the supervisor of our project management team, is going to lead you through the capital program. Jill Zachary had to leave to attend a public meeting that's being held for the residents, the community of Mountain Drive, to answer questions for them on rebuilding, removing debris, and all kinds of questions associated with fire recovery. So she had to leave, so Billy's going to do the complete presentation, and I'll chime in answers where appropriate. Billy?
Thank you. Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, this is a 2-part presentation. We're starting with just updating, as I often do, the projects that we've completed, capital projects completed, and those that are in the works right now, and then we're going to review the CIP, which is still a little bit of a work in progress. I have 6 projects to report on, and they're in your staff report in here, so don't need to read them all out loud. The first is Plaza Veracruz. It quietly opened a couple of weeks ago, and there was to be a ribbon cutting this week, but with staff being pulled away for T-Fire, I'm not sure if we're going to get back to that, but the park is open and really looking nice. I would consider it something close to a 50-year makeover in terms of the effort that was put into this. Some of the simpler things that we did were putting in some new concrete paths. The playground that we put in years ago still never had a accessible path going to it, and we've also repurposed, as we say, the faded benches from Stork Placida. If you remember the tumult we had quite a few years ago, we had some benches in storage that were going to go in there, so they found a new home. The landscaping is beautiful. We got a grant, as it shows there, from Santa Barbara Beautiful, and we put that toward the planting. It's all very appropriate for a Mediterranean park. If you know your trees, we have Montezuma cypress in there that have been there probably since the park was first created over 100 years ago, and we've planted a couple of new ones to start the succession. Typical stuff, irrigation, put in concrete mow strips to help us with our IPM program so we don't have to chemically spray. The less exciting news, but it's really a benefit to the park, is that the alley that borders the park on one side has been completely replaced with new speed bumps through there, and we also took out a bunch of creosote-soaked pilings that had separated the park from the alley and replaced it with really nice steel posts with chain and finial on them. So it's really quite nice looking. The other thing I'm glad we were able to afford is lighting throughout the park. There's 10 pole light fixtures in there, and it's really a very different experience driving by or walking past that park. So we think we'll get a lot of benefit from that. The funding is there. The majority of it was RDA, and as I mentioned, Santa Barbara Beautiful kicked in $17,000, part of which also included a bronze plaque that not only gives them credit but also gives a little bit of historic information about the park. It is one of the first parks. It's in the first batch of parks that was set aside by the city. Feel free to chime in if you have questions about individual projects. May as well do that as we go through. At long last, talking about projects that we've had on the books for a little while, Commissioner Forcell. This is one of them. The construction work was completed about a month ago. We finished off the checklist, but we have about 90 days of maintenance to give the plants a chance to set in, pull all the weeds that are going to come up. It was quite an adventure in construction. If you're familiar with the park design, it's a little bit eclectic. It doesn't just come right out of the book. So there was a lot of interpretation on site. That little compositive picture shows a few of the art elements, the frame structure that represents a house on the site. We used quite a few, majority of native plants in the planting. What else did I have in my notes? Plus some other art projects, both the bronzes that were done by Michael McMillan and a very nice tile rug, which sounds a little odd, but you'll understand when you see it. Funding sources, again, are there for you. It was a combination of general fund, 2 state grants. We had CDBG, Community Development Block Grant money, and the Bonat family, who is quite active in the community, brought in $27,500 of family contributions. They ended up deferring a family reunion that they have on a recurring basis rather than get on a cruise ship. Everybody took the money they would have spent on the cruise and chipped in to fund some children's art here. So it's really a very special, and we're going to give some recognition to them at the ribbon cutting, which will be, you'll get a real notice on this, Friday, December 18th. It's not only going to be, I'm sorry, I have the wrong number here, Friday the 19th, which will not only be the usual mucky mucks and grown-ups congratulating each other earlier in the afternoon, but it's an early day for Harding School, so we're going to be bringing kids over around 2:30. We have art projects, and we're inviting their parents to come pick them up there after school, so we hope to get a lot of activity there and roll it out.
I'll be on an airplane out of town that day.
Oh.
Darn.
I'll give you an early tour. The fences come down on the 15th. You still around?
Can you let us know, Billy, who falls in the mucky muck category?
It's just people like me and Ms.
I
Rapp.
just want to know whether to wear my mucky muck shirt or not when I come.
I think your term is up, so we're not putting you on the invite list.
You might be considered a lame duck mucky muck. I didn't think that would work out. Any questions on Bonat?
And congratulations. This is how many years?
Many.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somewhere in the middle of Fast Track and Molasses.
Yeah, but that it's done.
I'm going to continue to blame Creeks for putting the surf project underneath because we ended up.
Well, but it was one of those things, and I think we always have to keep this in our mind, that you can land bank. It's always good to have the land. You might not be able to do what you want to do with it for a little while, but this is a project that proves that. So
one other thing I didn't point out, and I hope you notice when you do come to the park, the very back of the, quote, house is a deck, and we cut a huge window in some of the willow trees at the top. We were allowed to do that. And now you can see right down from the park and from the street into the Old Mission Creek restoration. So the idea that drove that was having like a real diorama. Instead of standing in front of a window at a natural history museum, you actually get to see down to the effort below.
And that was some of the impetus when that land was bought, was for that restoration and things. So.
We also balanced the issue of security lighting there and made sure we had no impact on the neighbors next door, and they're pretty thrilled. Gotten some nice phone calls.
Excellent.
Advance the slide. That's not the way. There we go. Or take a welcome house. We're currently busting open walls and working away on that one. We had $100,000 in community development block grant money to mainly refurbish the interior. There's a little bit of work being done. In fact, in this slide, if you look on the lower left, there's a blue trash can there. We're building a small fence a little bit further back just to contain the trash. It's not a full trash enclosure, but it'll look a little bit nicer for the neighbors on Ortega Street. So inside, we're redoing all the floors, new ceiling tile, painting all the walls, and running some carpeting partway up the wall. That'll help quite a bit with sound dampening, because if that room tends to be pretty lively. It's also got a very unusual lighting system, type of light that takes quite a few minutes to warm up and reflect off the ceiling. All of that gets redone. Bathrooms, new finishes, some plastic coating partway up the wall, which will help us quite a bit with maintenance. And in the kitchen, we're putting in new counters, repairing some of the appliances, and there'll be a new set of accordion shutters that separate the pass-through area from the kitchen, so you don't see it when you're having an event there. So we think that's going to help quite a bit. We expect to be done in March, March of '09, long before the summer programs start, and get Susan Bardick back in there with her programs so we can keep the revenue going. I think I start. Oh, the other project. Yes, we have. I can't remember the abbreviation. California Wellness Foundation. We have. I'm losing the number in my head. I think it's $100,000 to do exterior. It's like. What is it? Never mind. Charlie McCarthy. Yeah, Nancy's working my mouth here. In the back, if you're familiar with the site, the back of the building just sort of bleakly opens out to basketball court. It used to have a wood trellis over it and some raised planters, and dry rot took its worst on all the woodwork there. And the planters that are immediately adjacent to the building are probably a source of water getting into the walls, because we've had some problems there. So we have another project that's just going into design that will build a new shade structure in the back, take the planter walls off that area and create kind of a slightly more enclosed patio, so that events from the Welcome House can actually use that area out there, and it'll be a little distinguishing paving area. So we're not going to encroach at all on the sports out there, but it'll be a little bit nicer, especially with that south-facing exposure. Cabrillo Bathhouse, $120,000 available from the general fund, and really to put the entire, both the men's and the women's room in that area back in shape requires quite a bit of plumbing, which we really can't touch with this kind of funding. There is discussion of a much larger project for the bathhouse, the entire downstairs, and when we start playing with those sorts of items, then we can address the big plumbing. So there's not going to be a major change to the actual facility, but we are going to replace all the partitions, new floor finishes. We were just out there this morning with some contractors getting some idea of what it would cost to tile partway up the walls. Basically cosmetics and functionality to make it an easier area to keep the maintenance up. So all of that will be done again before the summer season starts. We're working with Rich to make sure we don't step on any toes there. The Westside Community Center, this is just kind of a partial shot from the playground looking back toward the Housing Authority that fronts Chapala Street. What we have here at the former school site is a play area that we've carved out of the community center. It's not quite a park, but there's a fully functional playground there, a basketball hoop in what sometimes doubles as a parking lot, and that's kind of it. There was a lawn that has been pretty much overrun with gophers, and a portion of the playground and some of the plantings off to the right of the playground actually sit on the top of the channel that goes that carries Mission Creek through there. So we've got a few constraints. There's also a big sound wall to the rear of this picture, or actually it would be behind where the picture was taken from. So our main intent is to create a little bit more park-like atmosphere with some landscaping. There'll be some trees and shaded areas to sit. We've also worked with Caltrans to get permission to mount lights on the sound wall to take care of the darkness in the back of that area. We have some lights in the parking lot, but they just don't throw far enough back, and we think that's going to give residents in the neighborhood a lot more peace of mind for this area. The parks budget is going to be used to replace the playground itself. They're already moving forward with that. We'll be adding walkways and better accessibility, and hope to have that under construction by the summertime. This is funded through the grant from the RDA. They carved $250,000 out of a larger project for the West Downtown improvement. This is the soft finale of this portion. Spencer Adams is a project most people probably won't notice. There's already a temporary parking lot there that was supposed to be taken out after the Granada Garage was built. We're just going through the steps to have it meet the city's parking lot codes, which means some landscaping. That's pretty much it. You won't notice much of a difference there. So the next portion of the presentation is the capital improvement program, and I'm going to, you tell me. Yeah, okay, we'll go quickly through these. I keep hitting the wrong button, sorry folks. As an overview, there's a total of 32 projects that are going into the CIP. These numbers are in your report, so I won't drill down into those, but it gives you a breakdown of how the funding is categorized. We look at the entire CIP and break it down into 6 different categories. There are those projects that are renovation and repair of the facilities, the buildings, et cetera. Then same sort of approach for parks. Certainly any project that has to do with safety gets high consideration, things like the 1,000 steps where we have water seepage. Habitat restoration, we have some acquisition and also developing new facilities. You're familiar with this shot probably, the Franklin Center. This is a list of projects that fall under that category of renovation projects. Next category is park renovations. We have Shoreline Park, which is a pressing need, some improvements at Alice Keck, and general wear and tear at a few of our other park projects. So a lot of this is buckling concrete, fences that are having some problems. All of them have to rise to the level of at least $100,000 to make it into the capital program. Anything else is just kind of background repairs. Safety projects include our usual playground replacement project. Also, as I mentioned, 1,000 steps and Lower Mesa Lane steps, which is basically giving in to the power of the sea. All the concrete there is in need of some repair. Habitat restoration, we have 3 projects in that category. And under acquisition, you've all been talking about the Army Reserve Center and National Guard. We're also looking for a new home for the West Side Center and working on the carousel and off in the background an aquatic center. So projects that have funding, they're also described in your staff report. This is the list of those that have been funded in the current cycle. So we have some seed money to get a few of these projects rolling. But further off in the other years of the capital improvement program, we're putting in the money for additional design, permitting, and the actual construction. A lot of these are just enough to get the planning started and answer some questions about the projects. 1,000 Steps is the first one up. I've already mentioned what's going on there. It's historic, which will add some level of complication as we try to find a solution. It hasn't been nominated, but we'll probably hear from once we do a historic sites report, which is required, we'll probably hear from Landmarks that will have some special considerations here. Yes.
How old are those steps?
I believe the year was 1923 is the first record we have. I don't have the exact number. But it's in the 20s. 100 years. Excuse me? 27.
Okay.
And although it's never been designated, if we talk, the likelihood of restoring it and doing that is very difficult to recreate that, and the site conditions have changed enough that that would be problematic. So a solution might call for some destruction, and that's where we might, have some impacts on it.
Okay, yeah. I just would think safety would trump all.
Right, but not without a little molasses to wade through on the way there. So we'll see how that goes. Bird Refuge project, we've been talking about that for quite a few years. The scope of this project has some water quality improvements, some habitat, and certainly the sedimentation that's been exacerbating some of the problems there. We have some existing funds. Additional funding requests are listed there, and we know this would it would be a few years of planning and permitting, and then rather than just going in and doing one big project, it would be a series of phases to try to get this under manageable state. Kids World refurbishment, we're really just getting out ahead of this. We have a wood in the ground playground, safety codes continue to change. We may need to address some options here. We've had one community meeting, getting people who participated in the process years ago to give us some ideas on how we might move forward. We do have some existing funds for planning. We've had somebody from Robert Leathers, who originally designed it, out a couple of weeks ago, so we're just starting to take a few baby steps on this project, and we'll keep you informed. Lower Mesa Lane steps, picture's worth 1,000 words. You can see what's going on with the concrete area there. The big block to the left is in great shape, so it's not a huge project. In terms of actual construction, it's the access to the area that's going to complicate things and drive costs up. So first step is to get an engineer involved, come up with a conceptual approach, and then move forward with permitting and eventually construction. Mission Creek Lagoon, not too different in terms of the approach than the bird refuge. We're looking at habitat, water, safety, etc. Again, we have some seed money, which is why this is moved up in the CIP so that we can keep the momentum going once we get started. New projects, Chase Palm Park, well, again, they're listed here. We've got individual slides for each of these, but this shows you a little of the extent of the projects.
Can you talk a little bit about the Carousel acquisition? Are we on a... Oh, he will.
Let me get rid of my... I think that'll... Does that come up in the slide? Yeah, I'll get to those as we... So, again, these are just the categories of projects that I'm going to drill into with a little bit more detail. I apologize. This was going to be Jill's portion of the presentation, so I'm running through her notes here. Shoreline Park renovation, we're all aware of what's going on there. It's a matter of realigning the paths. While we're in there, we're going to look to replace all of the fencing along the bluff top and move it a little further out of harm's way. Nature never said it was done, so this won't be the last time we move the fence probably. We've also got some concerns at the overlook and trying to figure out through a geology report as well as some additional inspection we're going to do how much the existing drains that run through the park might be contributing to some of the problems there. So all of that gets a good look. We have a request in there for almost $500,000 to study it, come up with a solution, and move forward. Nancy, did you want to talk about this one?
The city is moving forward with negotiating with the Army for acquisition of the Fremont Army Reserve Center. Council has also authorized us to move forward with negotiations. And so what you see, the $15.5 million, is our estimate of both the acquisition cost and then the cost to develop the property. We are partnering with the Police Activities League and as our primary partner for this project, and we're just in the beginning discussion stages. We've also talked to Pony Baseball, since their home is McKenzie Park, and so they are very interested in working with us to renovate the park and see if we can carve out another youth sports field. So this is very preliminary.
And I think I think the next one's yours too.
We did keep the National Guard Armory in our capital program, and you can see the estimate is $11.5 million. It's not quite moving as fast as the Army Reserve, but I would just say that, as Chair Longstreet mentioned, this is about land banking because this is not a good time for the city in terms of funding these projects, so we won't be able to do it without partners in the community. But the community has been trying to purchase these two properties for community use, for decades. So if the door is open, we need to walk through. And so both of these projects are in the capital program.
Commissioner?
Who would we buy those two particular properties? Who would we be buying them from?
The Army Reserve is the feds, because it's the Army, and the National Guard is actually the property owned by the state of California.
And that's all the projects in terms of the capital improvement program, the CIP. We just finished off the second step. They're just called Form 2s, which gives a little bit more detail, and it's also has been reviewed by Public Works and by planning so that we make sure we really anticipate real project costs, real project timelines. It's the best checkup that we can get on those things. Then after city administrator's done, it moves to city council, and the rest will be future history.
Thank you. Questions of staff regarding capital? Yeah, Dave?
Regarding the West Side Park area, you were saying about the what do you call that, the grass on that area?
Right.
Were you guys maybe focusing on maybe actually doing something of repairing that, or that's not?
It's such a small area, and it really, if you look at it closely, it's almost a bowl. It's got quite a bit of elevation difference because there's a big drain right in the middle that's set fairly low between the gopher population that manages to escape to the flood control area where we really can't manage them. The effort to try to create a viable lawn in there, and such a small lawn, would be a real maintenance impact, we felt. And we had a meeting with neighbors from the community center and talked about the trade-offs of, do we want a lawn, do we want a cool place to sit, do we want to turn it into a bigger playground? And the consensus was that area would be better served just having some tall trees, make it a little bit more park-like, and create a little bit of shade so parents can sit and watch their kids from the sort of south side of the playground. But trying to keep gophers out of there for such a small area doesn't really fit our sustainability approach.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you for that report. It's come a long ways in the years that I've been here. A lot more money, but really to see projects, it's very well thought out.
Well, we didn't hear about the carousel.
Oh, the carousel. Yeah.
The carousel owner has notified us that at the end of the contract, they would like the city to either purchase the carousel or they are going to remove it and relocate it to another area. So at this time, because we're very challenged financially, we're in discussions to see what our alternatives are. We would like to keep the carousel, but it comes with a hefty price tag, and there are a lot of competing priorities greater than the carousel. So what we funded was the money in the capital program, and I shouldn't use the word funded because none of those projects are funded. But we've included it in the capital program for the proposed purchase price. So there will be more on that coming because their contract is up next year, and so we'll be looking at that. I did want to mention a couple of things that is in your report. We also have some work that will be done as part of the Public Works facility maintenance. And so we've had some spalling problems with the concrete at the Cabrillo Pavilion, and that is planned for FY10 for $310,000. We also are planning to rehabilitate the doors and windows of the Cabrillo Pavilion Arts Center for another $400,000 in FY11, and replacing the sport lighting at Dwight Murphy Ball Field for $200,000 in FY10 and 11. So it's another pocket of money that will be used towards our capital projects. And in the interest of time, I will come back, and we'll talk a bit about the infrastructure financing task force and what that means for our capital program. But I'd like to defer and have Cameron Benson give you an overview of the Creeks projects. So he was planning to go to the meeting in Montecito, and I'd like to get him out of here if he'd like to head on over there.
And definitely, yeah, I think anything to do with the T-Fire takes priority over our reports at this point.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Cameron Benson. I'm the Creeks Division Manager, and I'm glad to have this opportunity to present to you the Creeks Division's 6-year capital improvement program for fiscal years 2010 through 2015. We did do a presentation last month to the Creeks Advisory Committee, so Chair Longstreet will have to endure sitting through this presentation for a second time, but I'll go ahead and get started. The Creeks Division has a very extensive capital improvement program that funds a broad range of creek restoration and water quality improvement projects. The Creeks Division CIP is funded through Measure B and Measure B revenues as well as grant funding. The purpose of our 6-year program is to project our capital project schedules, to determine project milestones, determine funding requirements, and the 6-year program is adopted through the 2-year budget process and then reviewed by Council every year as part of the annual budget review. To prepare our program, we consider a range of issues, including major projects that we're completing, progress on other projects and programs, grant funding opportunities, community and committee input, capital infrastructure replacement needs. A big one for us as a division with a fairly small staff is staff resources to manage those projects going forward, and opportunities for collaboration. And lastly, I don't have a bullet point for it, but it's because it's so obvious, we consider the Measure B ordinance itself and the funding guidelines that were approved by the Creeks Advisory Committee and Council several years ago. The funding that's identified in our 6-year CIP is for a range of uses, including all stages of a project, from planning through design and permitting, and including construction and completion of the project. I did include a table in the staff report that was provided to you that lists all of our existing capital program projects. In the interest of time, I don't think I need to go through all of these. The table does discuss the current status of all the projects. Most of the projects and programs are in various stages of implementation. I do want to just highlight a couple of these projects to give you some idea of some of the projects we're working on now, and they're continuing projects that we have done some work on, and we will be continuing work on them over the next several years. The first is our catch basin debris screens. We have quite a bit of trash and other debris on the streets that either is pushed into the catch basins or blows into the catch basins from the wind on a regular basis. When it falls in there, it enters the storm drain system and goes directly into the creeks and then out to the beaches, completely unfiltered. So we did an installation this fall over in the Old Mission Creek watershed, which is identified, I don't have a pointer, but it's identified in the map on the lower right-hand side of the slide, and it's the brown area. It's about a 650-acre watershed. We put approximately 120 catch basin screens and completely screened off that entire watershed. Those storm drains would drop into Old Mission Creek, which then reconnects to Mission Creek and comes out right down near the wharf at the waterfront. as I said, we did complete that part of the project this fall. We are now working on assessment of other locations and trying to prioritize other locations to move forward with additional screen installation. We also have a project that we've been working on for several years to restore Steelhead Passage in Mission Creek. And a study was done several years back that identified 3 major impediments in Mission Creek for Steelhead Passage. Southern steelhead trout are an endangered species. They're on the federal endangered species list. They do try regularly to come up Mission Creek to spawn. It is a historic spawning ground for the steelhead. That picture on the upper left is a fish that came up. The steelhead lived part of their life in freshwater, then they lived part of their life in saltwater, and then they returned to their natal streams to spawn. That particular fish came up last February and was in a pool over in Lower Mission Creek. And unfortunately, the fish aren't able to get up to the prime spawning habitat because of barriers in the creek. And the main barrier is the Caltrans Channel, which is in the picture in the lower left there. And it's there are actually 2 sections of it, but it's a mile-long concrete channel. And water flowing through that channel is either does not provide the depth for the fish to swim up, or is moving too fast and they can't sustain the energy to move up through that channel. And so the fish, although they've been observed coming up trying to spawn in each of the last 5 years, have not made it past that channel and up into the upper watershed. We're working with a number of partners on this project, including the County Flood Control District, who owns the Caltrans Channel. We are working with Department of Fish and Game and the NOAA Fisheries, the federal agency that works on steelhead recovery. We are working on 2 additional barriers. One is in the picture in the middle there, which is at the north end of Oak Park, and that's at the Talent Road Bridge. And as you can see, that's a concrete apron coming down below the bridge, and that is too steep and too fast for the fish to climb. And then there's another project up at Highway 192, and both the Talent Road and the Highway 192 projects are in final design. Highway 192 will actually be built by the Kachuma Operations Maintenance Board as part of a South Coast conduit replacement that's in that location, and they will. We're doing the design. They will pay for and implement the construction on that portion. Final design is underway at the Talent Road Bridge. That project will likely go to construction in the summer of 2010, and the Caltrans Channel is at a stage where we have identified a design we think will work, will not raise flood elevations, will slow the velocity sufficient for the fish to get through, and will not cause a major maintenance headache through sedimentation. And so we will be moving forward with preliminary design work on that part of the project. And lastly, I wanted to mention that there are a lot of grants available for endangered species recovery, particularly focused on the steelhead. So far, our work on this effort has been funded almost entirely by grants. We're at 92% grant funding for this particular project. Now I wanted to move to new capital projects that are being proposed as part of the new 6-year CIP. We've got a long list here. We have 10 new projects to add. We're taking a lot less than that off the list. So it is an ambitious schedule for us, but we think we can make that happen. We based our program on current revenue projections for Measure B and what we have identified as potential grant sources for these projects. So going out 6 years, and on the spreadsheet that you have, all of the projects we have on the list are fully funded at this point, or we anticipate that they will be fully funded if those revenue projections and grants actually materialize. Several of these new projects are either in parks or adjacent to parks, and I just wanted to point those out in particular because I think those are the ones you might be most interested in hearing about. First, the second one on the list, Mission Creek Restoration at Oak Park. I mentioned we're doing the Fish Passage project at the Talent Road Bridge. That's at the north end of the park. We will also be considering possibility of doing some additional restoration on the banks of Oak Park, and of course, coming to your commission with any kind of conceptual idea would be a first step in that process. You see the fourth one on the list, Mission Creek Lagoon Management Program, and the sixth one, Andre Clark Bird Refuge, are both new programs for the Creeks Division to have in our capital improvement program, but they're not new to you. They've been part of the Parks Capital Improvement Program. We put them on the list because there are important water quality and habitat issues there, and the Creeks Division would like to be a partner with the Parks and Recreation Department in moving those projects forward. And so we have proposed some funding in our capital program to keep those projects moving forward. I'm thinking, let's see, the last four projects on there all have fairly direct impacts on parks. Honda Valley Restoration is a creek restoration project proposed in Honda Valley Park. There's a lot of non-native vegetation there. There's some asphalt in the channel, and we will look forward to restoring that. Or note that that project is not identified for funding until FY 2014. The San Pasqual Drain at Old Mission Creek, that's up at the top of Bonet Park, and that is a place we have continually observed high levels of indicator bacteria coming out of a storm drain. So we're going to do some source tracking research there, and if we can identify the source, or if we cannot, and we find something that we think is potentially harmful to human health, we will do some sort of capital project up there, maybe a storm drain to sewer diversion, so that we will divert that water for treatment at the wastewater plant. Rattlesnake Creek and Lighthouse Watershed Restoration. Rattlesnake Creek obviously is up at Schofield Park, and Lighthouse is at La Mesa Park, and we're looking at some restoration projects in both of those areas as well. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions or provide additional information about any of the projects for you.
Are there questions for Mr. Benson? Extensive. I just, I hear it the second time. It's still all good. It's so nice to, as I said before, look at a capital budget that actually has some funds coming into it. A source of funding, and I think that the Creeks Division has been a good steward of the Measure B money, and it's been used wisely, and I think the committee does a great job, and the staff is excellent, and keep going. Okay? And you can go to your meeting. Because you don't have enough meetings. Thank you. Ms. Rapp.
So Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I wanted to kind of tie it all together for you because I think it's very important that as we have discussed with you, the Infrastructure Financing Task Force developed their recommendations to the city on how to approach the tremendous need for providing financing to protect and preserve, our city facilities. And the Parks and Recreation Department owns a significant number of the city properties, or operates. And so we've given you a copy of their report. It's very interesting reading. There are a lot of good suggestions in there. And that report currently is making its way, went to City Council, now it's going back, spending some time at the Finance Committee, and they'll develop some recommendations, and it will go back to Council. And with us looking at, if you look at just the general fund proposed capital, this worksheet that Ms. Zachary put together is very helpful because it shows that, and this is our plan of what we anticipate of these projects could potentially be funded through grants. You'll even see the Measure B commitments for the 2 projects that Mr. Benson mentioned. So this 6-year capital program is about $40.6 million proposed of general fund projects, supplemented by 32.5 grants and donations. So, and 600,000's Measure B, so it's about $73,700,000. And so it's very hard for us because this is really more of a wish list. And I think it's very important that, when we talk about the capital program, that's what this is. This is really going on record with what is needed to protect and preserve our park and recreation facilities and to add to our facilities to meet community need. So very little of this, I anticipate, will be funded, especially as the city responds to the financial crisis that everyone is in the middle of at this time. So clearly for the Park and Recreation Department and the Commission and the City Council, the discussion of other financing vehicles is critical for us. So this is a good tool for you to hang on to that supplements your infrastructure financing task force document. I might suggest, sorry, that you keep these 2 things together, because I think you'll find them to be helpful tools as we have additional discussions. And so that concludes my remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions or comments? I read the document. You have a lot of questions, not things to address tonight, but it actually raised a lot of interesting points that are operational and, at their higher level than us. I mean, there's city council decisions in here that it would be interesting to sometime, and I don't know when, but sometime sit down and really discuss in a work session what, after the council makes its recommendations or in that process, because there were just some things that were a little, take you back, and as you try to think about them with an open mind, it's like, how would we work through that? How would we get some of these things to happen? So, but very good document.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, staff has discussed bringing that report back to you, having that report be presented to you. We did think that we would wait until the Finance Committee had taken a first stab at it. And so if the Commission is interested, then we'll look at bringing that back. I think that would be a very healthy discussion. I mean, it's a general fund, broader city discussion, but for parks and recreation, it's also, we're a big player in that. And so we'd be happy to set that up as a work session.
Good. I think that, to me, some of the things in here, the budget is so important every year, but we're talking about some major process changes in here that are even more important in the long haul than weathering, these storms that we weather. But I think it would be good to sit down and talk about it. But I would like to hear what the Finance Committee thinks about it. Yes.
I think the other thing that would be worthwhile for an agenda of a work session is some brainstorming and hearing from staff, who I'm sure are constantly talking about ideas for alternative and new revenue streams or revenue mechanisms, and in particular ones that are like Measure B are sort of earmarked for particular programs or particular sets of programs. Those sorts of things on a sort of broad policy level make me a little bit nervous. If you look at our state budget and our state budget process, it's sort of like earmarks gone wild or targeted revenue gone wild. But, I think given the general plan discussion that's going on, given where we are generally in terms of the economy, it would be a good thing to sort of hear at all levels, what kinds of ideas, crazy or not, are sort of bouncing around amongst staff and maybe amongst ourselves as well. So I'd like to see that as part of an agenda for any work session.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Larimore Hall, staff is beginning to have some discussions. We know that we're looking at reductions this year, and we'll be looking at pretty significant reductions for the year to come. And so we are having those brainstorming sessions, and we will be talking about some early work sessions with the commission just to, kind of let you know where we are, how big the nut to crack is, and some of those discussions. Because if it's as serious as it appears to be, we're talking some pretty significant reductions, potential reduction in service, and all of that. And we do have some philosophical discussions to have take place. And so we will be bringing that in a work session for the commission, and I think it's appropriate to also, and we will too, brainstorm other revenue ideas. So, but we're in that process right now of trying to define how big the problem is.
Okay. Well, do we have any other items on our agenda tonight? No old business or new business. So our next meeting will be December 17th.
Not sure. Probably. It's going to be a long meeting on December 17th. I'm making it long just for you. Thank you so much. You're so thoughtful.
Is that your last meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 3-4 hours, I think. With no breaks and no dinner. Okay. I would move to adjourn then.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night and good luck to everyone who's, in our hearts as a commission.